I'm excited to have the opportunity to speak with you today. I feel like we have some very interesting and compelling information to share with you about this business process. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to first introduce the overall objective of what it is that we're trying to present today. And we have put together a fictitious energy service provider called Parkit Energy Services. And that's going to be the company that we're primarily dealing with today during our demo and through our presentation. At Parkit Energy Services, the CFO has a company initiative to reduce DSO and to improve cash flow for the year. Speaking of improving cash flow, we're talking specifically about time to cash. I know that DSO is traditionally measured as from the time the invoice was created to the time that we receive cash or receive payment, but I'd like to expand on that a little bit and talk specifically about a metric that we call time to cash that I think is a more practical measurement of cash flow impact on an oil field service provider or any company for that matter that's doing complex services in the field. And specifically, time to cash is defined as the number of days between the time that we finish the job in the field to the time that we receive cash. The CFO at Parkit Energy Services is challenging his team and the company operations as well to finish the ticket in the field after the job is done and send an accurate invoice to the customer all on the same day that the job is completed. So that's a tall order when you think about what goes into that overall process. So let's drill a little bit deeper into the scenario that we're talking about. We have two companies involved. We have Parkit Energy Services, and we have their customer, an operator called Sirius Oil. In this case, Parkit Energy Services is a wireline company that's going out to a well site that is operated by Sirius Oil to perform different types of wireline services for Sirius. And as we know, when that field engineer is at the well site, they perform all the work that might take place over a period of several hours, could be several days, could be several weeks in some cases. But at the end of the job, his ultimate goal, once he's safely completed the job, is to generate a field service ticket or a field ticket. Some people have different ways of referring to it, but it is ultimately the representation of all of the equipment and services that were used and performed at the well site in performance of that complex service, in addition to supplies that were consumed that are ultimately charged back to the customer, in this case Sirius Oil, as well as labor that was performed, so actual people that were used in performance of the job. Once those things have been documented accurately, then we need to collect a signature from both the field engineer and the customer. So we sign and date our document. We ask our customer to take a look at it. They sign and date it as well. And in many cases, in most all cases, we have a stamp that has to be applied by the company man in the field before the field ticket is considered final and we've totally signed off on it. And that stamp might have a variety of attributes like the name of the well, the AFE number, different types of project codes, expense codes that the operating company might want to track. Once our field engineer has all of this information, then they can take that ticket and get it back to their accounting department so that an invoice can be generated. So most of the time we see that take place via FedEx, or maybe they email it in, or in some cases they literally drive it in when they finally get back to the office. Obviously that's an extension of the amount of time that it takes to get the invoice generated. So we're not even to DSO yet. We're still delaying the invoicing process. Once that invoice has been created, it's sent out to Sirius Oil for presentation to the company through their accounts payable department. As you can imagine, this can be a very time-consuming process in a manual world. And the challenge that the CFO has presented to the company, remember, is that we do all of these things within a very specific short period of time. So we have to create a 100% accurate invoice that's contract compliant and is also compliant with what we call the four-way match across the price book, the quote, the tickets, and the invoice. And all of these things, ticket creation, getting it back to our accounting department, creating the invoice, and then presenting it ultimately to the customer, all of these things need to be achieved in one day. That's the challenge that we've been presented by our CFO at Parker Energy Services. So how do we solve that? Matt and Marcus are going to get into a demonstration of the details of how that takes place. But in general, high-level overview of it is that you have to start with standardized price books that are built on a common set of master data, create accurate tickets in the field that can be signed and stamped electronically, and you've also, of course, got to provide for offline operability, and ultimately, when the invoice is generated, we need a low-touch or no-touch invoice creation process that eliminates redundant data entry where data transcription errors can be introduced, thereby causing the invoice to be inaccurate or non-compliant with the contract, which then gets kicked back by our operator, thus resetting the entire clock as far as the terms are concerned. So that's the high-level overview of how we're looking at solving the problem. Marcus and Matt are going to take you through the details of how that takes place within these systems. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Emily.
Okay, thanks, Travis. You've given us a really great macro view of the CFO challenge.